Welcome to Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
You go.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Talksicology, the latest and greatest podcast in the known universe, dealing with addiction, recovery, mental health, music, punk rock,
Skateboarding. Skydiving.
Yeah. Today has been a Dead Kennedys kind of day.
Has it?
Yeah, sure has. Oh, I'm Joseph, by the way. This is Jason.
Hello.
Jason's awesome.
Beautiful people.
I was driving to work today and I was listening to a podcast about the new Zelda game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something in my brain.
Nerd.
Dude, that game sold 10 million units in the first 3 days. It's
nerds. No, I know.
You're missing out.
Gabby's a big Zelda fan.
That's right.
Now.
That's right. Okay, so, but something in the podcast, just something in my soul said, I need some Dead Kennedys.
What's your go-to Dead Kennedys?
I started with Kill the Four.
Okay.
Then I went on to Riot. Then Nazi Punks Fuck Off. Then I played Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables from the beginning and just let it go.
Okay.
And then halfway through that album, I was about to be at work. Needed to change vibes just a little bit. So I listened to the Squirrel Nut Zippers live album.
Interesting band. Very interesting band.
They're one of my favorite obscure one-hit wonders that actually have an amazing catalog.
Do they? I mean, I'm of course familiar with their one hit, the Zoot Suit Riot.
No, that was Big Bad Voodoo Daddy.
Was it?
Did Zoot Suit Riot.
Well, then I don't know.
Squirrel Nut Zippers did Hell.
Hell, okay. Well, then I don't know my Squirrel Nut Zippers from my Big Bad Bo Daddy Daddies.
In the afterlife, you could be heading for this. But it was the same era, the whole swing.
Yeah, thing. When the swing dancing.
Swingers with...
oh, wow. See, I would have bet money that was Squirrel Nut Zippers, so I would have lost money. You know how often I bet money on Squirrel Nut Zippers, too, so...
Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so What emotions do you imagine when when someone says to you that it was kind of a Dead Kennedys kind of day?
Angsty,
a
little bit like, what's the mood that you would say if you're feeling like anti-authority? Maybe
rebellious.
Did you get in a fight with your boss?
No.
Your wife?
No. This morning was just fine. I was just like, I need some Dead Kennedys.
Suburban angst.
No, almost like...
That's suburban angst.
Well, here's what I was thinking about, right? Because you don't see a lot of old punk rockers, right? Because punk rock is...
You're not looking.
No, I mean, the percentage of teenage punk rockers that remain like real punky.
I think, I don't know. I guess I just came from a group of people that kind of stayed true, Joseph. Because I have... If you go onto my Facebook page and look through my friends, you'll see where they're all hiding.
Look, so none of my punk rock friends work for Tesla or Oracle or Blackstone, right? Most of them have legit jobs now.
Right.
But they're all kind of I work in addiction treatment, which is sort of,
It is. I think that is a very punk rock thing.
Recovery's a rebellious act.
It actually is. It doesn't seem like it when you're in your active addiction or when you think of recovery.
Yeah, but it is.
It is. I agree.
Or I got a buddy who is real punk who now he's an English professor at a university, and tries to subvert the system from the inside.
I have a lot of friends that did that kept their punk ethos and then
became professors.
Used it for good and not just, putting safety pins through their cheeks and whatever punk rockers do. Mosh pit.
Yeah. But no, I think I needed some inspiration, some youthful energy, and in particular, Riot used to send me into a frenzy.
Yeah. I listened to I got reacquainted with an old album It's a New York City hardcore compilation from Revelation Records. And it has all these bands. You might be familiar with some of them, but like Bold, Youth of Today. So it's a lot of the late 80s New York City, like a lot of straight edge bands, a lot of hardcore stuff. And I
feel like the late 80s was when like the straight edge bands decided to not be straight edge anymore.
No, late 80s, because there was a couple of different waves from it. So you have like the first wave, which was Minor Threat, bands like that. And then the second wave, which came more towards, I would say, 1988, around that point, the New York City hardcore bands, Youth of Today, Bold. There became a big resurgence of it. Yeah. And it was when the punk rockers started kind of, or the hardcore kids, I'd say, big difference if you come from that.
Very different.
Very different. And the hardcore kids started, like, their snap back to being like the stereotypical punk rocker getting drunk in an alley with a leather jacket. They started wearing like Champion hooded sweatshirts and Nikes and like sweat shorts. Yeah. I mean, a lot of them were still skateboarding and stuff like that, but you couldn't tell, except for like the shaved head was the one thing back then that kind of made the difference. So if you saw like a kid dressed like that at football practice, you wouldn't think anything. With the shaved head, you're like, okay, you're a hardcore kid.
I think hot temperatures lead to angry music. Are you dying?
I'm so dying.
You're dying of the heat.
The heat so much.
It's real hot.
Heck, it started. It's like this week it started.
Bro, I got here. I had my AC going full blast. Parked out front. My car was nice and cool. Turned off the car, opened my door, and sat there for maybe 3 minutes to finish up an email. Started sweating immediately.
Man, I get my seasonal kind of depression. I get like, I don't know. I just don't.
You get summer seasonal depression?
I do.
I think that's probably pretty rare.
Is it? Yeah.
I think most people associate it with like the winter.
They do. And I don't know, it like robs me of my energy. And I have a friend who's coming to town tomorrow and we're going to be like skate. We have like this whole skate thing planned.
Yeah. So when you say seasonal depression, do you mean like literally like you do feel like a certain level of like a deeper than sadness feeling?
A little
Or
bit.
do you just mean like, I'm kind of bummed out, it's hot?
I'll meet you in the middle. I'm very bummed out that it's hot.
Okay.
I'm just kind of bummed out that it's hot. So depression is something that like, I'm sure if I took a dip in the pool or something, I'd feel a little bit better. But it's like, I don't know. It's like there's no part of me that gets excited about it being hot out, and like even thinking about like the things I could do outdoors and stuff. Like when I think of what I want to do on vacation, I got to go back to that. I don't think of like sitting on the beach, stuff like that. I want to be in like a city where it's cold. Like I don't know. That's just what I do. However, you'll be proud of me. You know what I just did, and I could say it now.
What did you do?
I booked the cruise.
Which one?
I booked it's a Royal Caribbean cruise. Brought to you by Royal Caribbean Cruises. If you want to give me any freebies on there, any excursions. But yeah, I surprised Gabby for our 6-year anniversary from the day we met, and I had to tell her early
because you needed it.
I just wanted her to be able to prepare for things because she's a big
planner.
She
and cruises have like the formal night and the whatever night.
Yeah, see, I didn't.
Are you going out of Galveston or Florida?
Galveston.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Now, are you on some level doing it semi-ironically? Like, are you already planning like a shuffleboard photo shoot in your head?
Listen, I am. A, I'm going to be 50 years old, and B, I spent the majority of my life in Miami. So if you think I don't know my way about around a shuffleboard, is it a court? A shuffleboard board?
I think so, court.
Yeah, I know my way around some shuffleboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we moved to Miami in 1979 and we lived in a hotel on Miami Beach for like the first few months when the house was getting ready. Yeah. And it was like me, it was 5 or 6. My parents were probably in their mid to late 20s, and everybody else was 90 years old, and I loved it. I was like hanging out with all the old people and playing
Tell me about
shuffleboard
the
with
war.
They were great. I remember there was this old guy who would just sit out there, and he was like an old boxer, and he had pictures, and he would tell me about like his boxing career and stuff, and I thought it was fascinating.
Speaking of beaches, our guest today apparently likes the beach. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where people surf, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless they come to Waco and they. But yes, traditionally, one surfs at a beach.
Yeah. So today's guest is a surfer, a psychologist. I should have read the bio you sent me, but it's so much more fun to go in kind of blind. Super cool woman who. Man, I just want to get to the story.
Yeah.
But super involved in what is really interesting to me because of our recent work is
Trauma.
the intersection of trauma with SUD, eating disorders, and all kinds of other, and just the way that all kind. Anyway, but I'm gonna let her tell you about herself.
All right.
Coming to us all the way, our first international guest.
We are worldly.
Coming all the way from Australia.
Mrs. I'm not sure. Welcome, Sandi James.
Hey, that was a really nice introduction.
Thank you.
Really, was that okay? Because I felt like it kind of fumbled through it a little bit.
That's okay. Fumbling's good.
We are fumblers, but we own it.
Yeah, All right.
Winging it.
Yeah. So it's early where you are. Thank you for spending your morning with us.
It's early tomorrow.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Sandy from the future.
Yeah.
What's it like?
How are things on May 24th?
Yeah.
Which you'll like, right?
Thank you.
Oh, because you're opposite us.
Yes.
Different hemispheres. Wow. Toilets flush the different ways.
And winter is coming.
Winter is coming. I'm coming. I'm going to come visit for 6 months.
That's what you can do.
I'll swap with you.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. You look like you have plenty of books for me to read there.
I love the heat.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. See, I grew up, in a place where it starts to hit 100 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. But it starts to get very hot in like May, and it stays there till like November. So I love the heat. Very used to it.
I'm happy for you both.
Yeah. But
I lived in Malaysia for 8 years. So
that's a little toasty.
God, so you've lived a whole ton of places.
Wow.
It sounds
I
like.
have.
And I just really quickly want to touch on one part of your story before we kind of get into it. But one of my favorite podcasts right now is by a guy named David Ferrier. And he is a New Zealander who got stranded in the United States during COVID. And he started a podcast called Flightless Bird.
Oh, yeah.
This is a Kiwi.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about him trying to understand American culture. Like, and I mean, like, trying to understand Disney and Dr. Pepper
QAnon.
and barbecue and QAnon and all that kind of stuff, which I don't know if I call QAnon culture. But anyway, welcome to the show. And thank you so much for being here today. Yeah. So I guess I kind of, butchered your introduction just a little bit, but let's just start with what brought you to this type of work, to being a helping professional, to wanting to help other people heal from all sorts of trauma and addictions and disorders.
I kind of fell into it, really. So my lived experience primarily was what led me here, but I was a school teacher originally, which I was an art teacher, and I worked a lot. I did a master's in special ed, so I worked with behavior and emotional disorders, and then I got a scholarship to become a psychologist. So that was how that happened. And then from there, I just worked with the people that I relate to the most. And I guess the population that I really enjoy working with are versions of myself, right? The ones that people give up on, the ones that are too hard, the ones that don't fit into your typical therapy room.
Right. So did you start working with troubled kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was a troubled kid, and we've talked about this on the show before. And when I was in junior high school, and this is, the 1980s, late 1980s, they put me in a class which was very compassionately titled Emotionally Handicapped. So I was an
Nice.
emotionally handicapped kid, and and it's like
That's a badge of honor.
that was the thing. And especially if you're, a little bit of a shit anyway, you get in there and you're like, you want to see fucking emotionally handicapped? I'm going to show you emotionally handicapped. And
let me prove to you why I'm here.
Yeah, and it was like, because they really didn't know what to do with me, because I functioned very well. I was I think in like fourth grade I was reading at like a 10th grade level. Like I was good at certain things, but you could just sit me down. Like I remember this one time my uncle was like telling me the answers. Like he'd given up on trying to help me with my homework and was just like, here's the answer, write it down. And I'm just like, I can't sit still. So they just didn't. So they just threw me in a cage and poked at me with sticks and called me emotionally handicapped.
Oh, I had a permanent desk outside all of my classrooms pretty much. So I didn't get a special room. I just got completely exiled from everybody else.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we're very much
So I didn't stay there very long though. Like you put a kid in the corridor, what do you think is going to happen?
Right. You go for walking around,
no
exploring.
supervision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Check out the fire extinguishers.
Yeah. So when you mentioned lived experience, I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this, but we typically are very open about it. I'll be celebrating 15 years in recovery in July, and then Jason has about to have 7?
7 years, and yeah.
Like next week or something.
Oh, yeah, like a week and a half.
Yeah. So, and I was a big old heroin addict. Jason,
as was I.
Did lots of things. And so, are you comfortable talking about that recovery piece, or yeah? So
yeah, 100%.
So, what kind of drugs did you do, and what made you want to stop doing them?
Oh God, which ones didn't I do?
Right.
I was really young when I started. So, I think with most people, I started with alcohol and weed, right, and then quickly progressed onto amphetamines, which I don't like. They make me go to sleep and stuff. So heroin also was
all right. Heroin
preferred drug of choice. Yeah,
it's a good one.
It is way too good for
it's too good.
any human.
Yeah.
And so what type of recovery do you consider yourself to be in recovery today, and what type of recovery do you practice?
I tried 12-step recovery and found that to be challenging. The idea, so yeah, I did it for like 10 years or something and ended up dropping out there. Because I would have a glass of wine with dinner because I didn't excessively drink alcohol at any point. And I'd be told that I'd relapsed. So then I was like, well, fuck you, I'm going to relapse, right? So I did that kind of in-out thing for a really long time and couldn't get my head around why I needed to be abstinent from everything. Didn't make sense to me. So I practice more of a harm reduction approach and work with, like when I'm working with people, I work with people where they're at. So whatever their goals are. And pretty much at the end of the day, abstinence is the goal, right? Yeah. For anyone who has a substance use disorder. And how you get them varies for different people.
Absolutely.
So,
now question. So here in Texas, we're in Texas, right? Which Texas is a more conservative state in a lot of different ways. And one of them is recovery, right? Here in Texas, abstinence-based 12-step, vaguely Christian God-oriented recovery is kind of the norm, right? And what we're seeing in treatment now and in recovery now is that people are just sort of starting to open up to the ideas of harm reduction, medication-assisted treatment, even other abstinence-based programs like Dharma recovery, Celebrate recovery, et cetera, et cetera. What's the climate like in Australia?
the same.
Yeah, about the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's which is something I sort of find difficult. So finding community is quite hard. I actually went to an NA meeting last week, a couple of weeks ago with a client, and it's exactly the same. I'm like transported back into my 20s instantly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely challenging for a lot of folks just because the 12-step community is so big and well established that finding a comparable sense of community or fellowship can be challenging in some of these other areas. Yeah.
Especially if you want to be like I abstain from most things now, and I find it really hard to socialize and do all of those things with kind of normal people, right? Like I leave early. I just can't be bothered with it really most of the time.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that too much because I am abstinence based. I work a 12-step program, and for me, that's the only way that I can do it because I am I do not have the luxury to enjoy a glass of wine here and there or anything like that. It's just I've tried a million times, tried for
We do lots of practice, right? Lots of research.
and it's just, I know what works for me, and then of course when I first got clean, I knew what worked for everybody. Like that was the old 12 step was the only way. And then, thankfully I maintain what works for me, but then have seen just by, tons of friends and my partner and just people who it just didn't work for them like that. Different things work for them. Some people can enjoy a glass of wine here and there, which definitely like kind of ostracizes you from that group because that, like you said, it's a relapse. And we've had this conversation before, but if it's like, I know somebody very close to me who, after 4 years, decided like, I think I'm going to have a drink with dinner, had about that much of the drink at dinner and said that was enjoyable. And that was it. Mm-hmm. And then it's just like, yeah, that's not in my opinion, that's not a relapse. That's, trying different things. But then if you go to your 12-step friends, a lot of people would be I can't, whoa.
Yeah.
You need to go to Detox.
Yeah.
It's like I had a sip of a fucking vermouth.
Yeah. Don't even call me till you've got 30 days.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
That's what I struggled with. Like I would never stop anyone. Like I would never not recommend it. It's a great place for community if that's what you're looking for. And there are other avenues as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Not many, but hopefully building it.
Yeah. So how is the Australian government with all that kind of stuff? Because here in Texas, like needle exchange programs are technically illegal. Fentanyl testing strips are still pretty illegal. There's no safe injection sites. There's none of that kind of stuff. Is same thing, kind of Australia still a little bit on the conservative side of things, or are y'all a little ahead of us on that?
We're a little ahead of you. There's 2 safe injecting rooms in Australia at the moment, one in Sydney and one in Melbourne, which are fabulous. The Melbourne one's a little bit controversial in terms of its location, I think.
Is it in the nice part of town?
No. Well, no, it's where people use, right? Which is where you would put it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think because there's units around. Anyway, my partner works at that.
Oh, very
that one. She flies in and out of Melbourne to work there, which is awesome.
So speaking of flying,
mm-hmm.
At one point in the year 2020, you flew to the UK.
I did.
And then what happened?
I flew to the UK at the beginning of March.
At the beginning of March. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I went for a conference. So I went to Dublin for 10 days to present at the Global Alcohol Policy Conference, I think was what it was called. And then the world closed. So I got stuck in Dublin on my own, which was pretty horrendous. And I remember the day that I got the phone call and I was sitting in the gutter of the hotel that I was staying in, just literally beside myself. Like I was hysterical, didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go. I was meant to be flying back to Malaysia because I was working at. So I was back in Australia briefly, and then I was returning to Malaysia to take up my contract, and it didn't happen. I think eventually that did, but so I got stuck for 8 months. I was in Dublin briefly, and then someone offered me a place near Belfast, so I went up there. I stayed there for a couple of months. Then I went to London, where someone else offered me a room. Then I went to Devon, then Bristol, and then Malaysia. Actually, climbed through so many hoops to get me permission to re-enter Malaysia, where Australia was just like, oh no, there's not enough room on the plane.
Well, yeah, because Australia was one of the most severe lockdowns, shut the border just for months at a time, right?
Yeah, to everybody.
Yeah,
like it doesn't matter who you are. So there was upwards of 40,000 Australian citizens that got stranded internationally during 2020.
And do you guys all have like a Facebook group, like where you connected?
Yeah, really?
Yeah. I mean, it's not funny, but like,
no, that's pretty. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
That was how I found accommodation. A lot of the time was through a Facebook group. So someone started a Facebook group, and Australians that were living in the UK at the time, if they had a room, they made that available for people to come stay in. So there was a lot of community that came out of that.
Love it. Love it. So now, in reading your bio, it seemed like during that period of time is when you started to really explore the trauma aspect and how it connects with eating disorders, addiction, etc.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's accurate. I read that correctly. Perfect. So you were already doing addiction work prior, because you went to go present at this conference. Which, by the way, what were you presenting on? And did you get to do the presentation before?
I did the presentation. The world was gradually closing while the conference was on. That was a different story. So it was a very interesting time. But the presentation, I was doing my PhD on alcohol use in the indigenous communities in Sabah, Malaysia,
Mm-hmm.
and the crossover. So where introduced alcohol, like the impact of, because they have traditional alcohol in that country, in that location, where they make rice wine and do all that kind of stuff. And then foreigners came in and brought distilling and other beverages.
So they had kind of like
the problem.
So they had kind of like the soft alcohol is part of their culture, and then immigrants, Westerners brought the hard liquor. Yeah.
Colonizers.
The colonizers.
Yeah, really. Yeah, they had. I don't know if it was soft. It's pretty hectic, but yeah, from as far as I got into the study, I had to withdraw from that study at the end because of COVID. But it was a binge drinking culture, and there's many of those around the world that are in like the indigenous cultures. They'll make a big batch of rice wine or whatever alcohol they have and drink it until it runs out, and then they get on with their life.
Nobody's going home till this is all done.
Yeah, and it's usually related to like a celebration, someone getting married, someone's death, some god thing doing something, or like a mountain. A very animist.
Yes,
that's the word. Yeah, those kind of traditions.
Love it.
And then the missionaries and other colonizers or other people came in and changed everything.
They're like, no, we drink every day.
Yeah. Just you don't need a celebration.
Yeah. Well, in Africa, they used to get the workers on farms and stuff would get paid with alcohol.
Really?
So it's across. Were studies in Africa, in India as well. Similar stories across most places.
Jason, have I ever told you about when I almost got recruited to go work in India?
No.
So apparently, and you might be able to shed some light on this, but this recruiter reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we're opening up a treatment center in India,
Mm-hmm.
and we're looking for American drug and alcohol counselors to come help open it." And so I did a little bit of research, and I guess basically, India for a long time was a very poverty-stricken country, and then with their rise in the medical and tech sectors, all of a sudden they had a much larger middle class than they had historically. And with that much larger middle class, with the more disposable income, all of a sudden they saw a huge spike in alcohol and drug abuse. And since they never had that in India, they had zero professional workforce prepared to address the issue. So they were having to import people
interesting.
from,
They did have it before, but it was amongst the lower classes of India, so it wasn't considered a problem. Right? Once it started to infiltrate up, then it was like, oh my God, this is affecting important people now.
Well, just like here with the opioid crisis, right? Individuals who've been working in treatment, we know that the opioid crisis has been going on for at least 2 decades at this point. Yeah. But it didn't really meet, national notoriety until it started to impact soccer moms and kids in the suburbs and, your kind of upper middle class folks. So
yeah, the HIV crisis was the same, right? When it didn't come to much attention until it started to affect heterosexual men.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh shit, we got to put a stop to this.
This is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Really
so during the pandemic, that first chunk of the pandemic, when you were basically trapped in the UK, what led you to start to explore that deeper relationship between trauma and these other diagnoses?
Watching what happened for me, really. So that was a trauma that was really traumatic. But what I found was that my old trauma came back with like a vengeance. And I thought, like we all do, right? I've dealt with that. It's okay. I'm done. Not done at all. So I started having nightmares and a whole bunch of stuff again. And food was harder to get a lot of the time. So I noticed some of those thoughts coming back. The urge to use to stop the pain also came back. And that was where I was like, hang on, like what's going on with this? Trying to look at the correlation. Like I didn't at the time because I was just surviving. But as I started to come out of that and find my feet again and rebuild my confidence, then I was really like, we can't just treat the substance use or the eating disorder in isolation. It has to be done with other work as well. And I'm at the moment trying to find a home for a new PhD study because I didn't get to finish the other one, but I want to look at treatment trauma essentially. And
trauma from treatment.
Yes. Yeah, like eating disorder treatment particularly can be incredibly traumatic, right? The experience of being forced to eat and having to gain weight and do all of those things is it's hard work. And some of the other stuff that happens, like involuntary admissions and all of that stuff is traumatic. And once the person moves out of that phase, we never talk about it again. And Gabor Mate talks about trauma being not the event, but the support and the lack of support afterwards, right? And that's essentially what we're doing. So we're forcing people to get treatment and then pretending that we didn't do that. And that's where I want to do my study is how can we change what we're doing in that area and help people to move into recovery less impacted by starting out in recovery. Like I remember Detox being horrendous. And God, I did it so many times. You'd think I would have learned, right? But especially unmedicated detoxes that I also did on repeat. We had a detox in Sydney called Basement 82. It doesn't exist anymore, so I can mention it. But it was like an open door. It was unmedicated. You could go there as many times as you needed to with, I think it was 24 hours in between. So if you took off, you'd have to wait 24 hours and you could go back. But that was like days and days with no sleep. And
oh my goodness.
Would they do the things we have facilities here, usually nonprofits that are Christian based, that they'll do an unmedicated detox, but someone's standing or sitting near your bed praying for you the whole time. Was it?
Thank God for that.
No, I probably would have kicked them in the head.
Yeah, right. So,
and then eventually they make
Shut
you
the
sell
fuck
banana
up.
bread.
What are you doing?
so, I mean, was there no comfort, not even like a Valium or anything? It just completely just cold turkey.
You could get, I think, none. They had like muscle rub, and I remember Cocoa Pops was like my comfort food at the time. Do you know Cocoa Pops?
Yeah.
Little chocolate balls with cereal.
The best thing on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah. See, for me,
especially when you're hanging out.
For me, my detox food was Dr. Pepper, which I don't know if y'all have that, and Snickers bars.
That's good.
Yeah.
See, I would have, violent withdrawal. So I would take like frozen fruit, put it in a blender and drink it as fast as I can. And then put like Coke or something in it so I could absorb as much sugar before I would throw it up eventually within like a minute or two. So
I imagine that drinking it as fast as you could would probably lead it to bounce back out.
I didn't say I was, I would definitely.
He was in the emotionally handicapped class.
That's right. I forgot about that. That explains everything.
So that's a really interesting thought because I've worked in treatment now for 13, 14 years, something like that, and while in Texas we don't have necessarily where you can be mandated by court to go to treatment, right? Like you can't get like in Florida they have something that Baker acted and things like that. In Texas it's voluntary unless you're actually in jail, right? But it is,
which is a whole different story.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've detoxed in jail before. That is not fun.
That's for another podcast.
But, it is fairly common practice, right? That individuals are intervened on, forced by their families, but, setting boundaries like taking away living situations, taking away cars, taking away vehicles, threatening them with taking their children, etc. Like most, I want to say 60 to 70% of the clients I see most of the time have been coerced to some degree.
Right.
And I've never really considered that in itself could be traumatic.
The interventions are pretty full on over there. That I was just thinking about before I came on. One of the models that I'm training in at the moment is called Arise Invitational Interventions and Continuing Care. And
that's Judith Landau's certified, stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with her when I was in Thailand. So I'm hoping to visit her when I'm in Colorado in about 3 weeks, which will be fun. I haven't seen her since 2016 maybe, or 17, maybe 18. Back then, long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm almost certified in that. And that's a model that I really stand by. And one of the things that we're trying to do is adapt that or modify it slightly to fit with the eating disorder as well. So because it doesn't quite fit.
In a nutshell, what if you could explain what that type is?
So the Arise model is based on building network and getting not just family together, but bringing in everyone that's connected to that person. And instead of having them at the center as the problem, it places everyone on equal footing. And it's about communicating, facilitating communication, and it's invitational. If you don't want to attend, the family can still meet without the person. It doesn't have to be not everyone needs to be there. And it's also talks a lot. It's also about the generational trauma and the impact of that. So one of the key components is the Genogram, and looking at the family history and how that plays into where people are now, and how we can sort of to upturn that generational impact of stuff. So Jason, looking at transitions and stuff like that.
Are you familiar with genograms at all, Jason?
No, I'm not.
So a genogram is basically like a family tree on steroids, right? So you kind of do your family tree and like your significant relationships, but then you can, like, instead of everybody being a circle on the family tree, you can give different shapes to the individuals to kind of denote things about them. And then instead of just having lines connecting the different relationships, you can do a zigzag or a squiggle or a dotted line, and those all represent different relationship dynamics. And so,
colors.
And colors, yes,
colors.
and colors. And so it's like a family tree that also is, it's almost like a biopsychosocial family tree.
Okay.
Super cool stuff.
Yeah. Sounds.
And going back, like most of us are immigrants, right? And thinking about the impact of that on people. So that displacement and how that flows down through generations. And typically, like what I learned from the Arise model is that it usually starts with a point. So one or two people at the top having something happen, and then it flows out. And then as these people start to find recovery or get well, then it starts to come back in. So it's typically a diamond shape, and that's where we want to work, is we want to bring it back down.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I can, for the years that almost decades that I've been going into treatment and, been around it, so many people just return to the same situation right afterwards, and then people expect some magic to happen, that everything else is going to be fixed, but then they get back to a situation that's not healthy, where people don't understand what part they took in it or what they need to do to help the situation. And makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
And taking that blame off, right? Taking that blame off people, and because it's invitational, it reduces the kind of the trauma impact and that forcing. It becomes a choice. People make choices.
Yeah,
and treatment may look like residential treatment. It may look like detox, or it may look like outpatient treatment, or 12 steps, or smart recovery, or Dharma, or whatever that looks like. So the word treatment is in the broad sense of the term, rather than forcing people to do stuff.
Traditionally, right, interventions didn't really start off as like an official kind of specialty, right? Just kind of some, 12-steppers started convincing other people to go to treatment, right? And
usually ambushing them,
yes,
right? Like
very much like the show Intervention, right? Like, hey, come over for coffee, and you walk in, and everyone you love is there to tell you you're a piece of shit and you need to go to rehab.
Put a pillowcase over you and shove you in a van.
Yes, and I have participated in my fair share of those. Especially, I attended a rehab in Mexico that was based on that old therapeutic community model, if you're familiar. So, basically the inmates running the asylum, right? Like once you were a client for a certain amount of time, you were like a trustee, and you would, have a function within the facility. And so very often more senior members were tasked with going out and basically kidnapping people whose families wanted them to go to treatment. Like, no, not even an intervention. It was like, hey, we've got handcuffs in this bag.
We could do this easy way or the hard way.
You're going to rehab, buddy. And it was so...
Wow.
Yeah, but that was a long time. I wasn't licensed yet when I did that.
You were the muscle.
But like, I could absolutely see.
Handcuffs have their place, but that's not where they belong.
Yeah, I mean, I would just situations like that. I'd just be like, well, I could probably outrun you. I could probably knock you out. I could probably, it doesn't seem like a great. The success rate was probably not so great.
Oh no, 100%.
Yeah,
100% success rate.
Oh yeah, 100% proven.
Oh yeah,
like all treatment episodes, right? 100% success rate.
Well, I mean, we'd get you there 100%. Okay, what happened after that?
Okay,
who knows?
If that's what the success is considered.
No, I'm not talking like recovery. I'm talking about
the
like
success. That
can we get you in the car and get you to the treatment center? Yeah. But yeah, super traumatizing experience for a lot of people.
And then it never gets talked about, right? Are you there? Let's just continue on. And
no, it never gets addressed. It doesn't.
Until now.
One of the other things about the Arise model is that, like, I do it by telehealth as well, and as an international, because it's not like I don't have to be registered in a state. So I can work. I have worked with some people in the US, the UK, Australia, like the opposite side of Australia from where I am.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, so
Really like it.
let's dig in a little on the eating disorder stuff, because I know as a clinician, I've always found some of the most challenging clients to be the ones who had both an eating disorder and substance use disorders. We've talked about it on the show before. It's like whack-a-mole, right? Either the eating disorder is super under control and managed, but their drug use is out of control, or vice versa, right? Like one of the two always seems. So what have you found in the connection between the two, and what are your ideas around how to best treat that?
I think one thing about substance use treatment is often health and well-being is promoted as like clean eating, all of that kind of bullshit is something that gets really pressed in substance use treatment.
Yeah.
Let's go to the gym, let's do this, let's do that. And that can also flip it. So I haven't quite figured out, because treatment centers are usually really specific, like you're coming here for an eating disorder and that's all we're going to talk about. We're thinking about, when I work with people, I think about what's actually the precipitant to those thoughts, right? So what is it that you are trying to run from, rather than what the particular substance is? So I kind of group them together and think about it that way, rather than trying to focus on one or the other, while also looking at both. Like if you're in treatment, you're going to be abstinent. So let's sort of talk about that while you're here and what's going on with that. Now you're having cravings, and while also trying to eat or not eat, or whatever the case may be. So it's hard, but that's one of the things that I want to come up with through my PhD, is talking to people, going to be doing a qualitative study. So I want to talk to people and get what the people on the ground actually think would be helpful, and then develop something out of that. So making up some guidelines.
So kind of,
there is nothing at the moment.
Yeah. So question kind of along those lines, right? Very often with addiction treatment, some form of spirituality is touted as being key to any sort of sustained, lasting recovery. Is with eating disorders, where an individual does not have the luxury of abstaining completely from eating. Is there a spiritual component that's ever brought into that, or is that viewed as pseudoscience?
No, it is brought in. It's less blatant. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah.
Like as the 12 steps, it's really like, here, this is it.
Yeah, God is the answer.
Yeah. I talk a lot about mindfulness, and one of the trainings that I've done is the Carolyn Costin eating disorder recovery coach model. And she talks about feeding the soul, and that doesn't only include food, right? Like, so you feed the soul with nutrition, with joyful movement, with connection to other people, with mindfulness tasks, with something fun, like, I don't know if you do gardening or whatever, like there's different ways to feed the soul, and that's where I kind of come in and how I like to frame it as well. So surfing for me feeds my soul.
Yes. Absolutely.
And skateboarding, except that it also scares the shit out of me, because the ground is a hell of a lot harder than the ocean.
But there's no sharks in the ground.
There's no sharks in the ocean. There's sharks above the ground, dude.
That's what I was going to say. Different types of sharks, depending where you go.
It's funny. I had lunch with a friend of mine just before coming and doing the show, and he was asking me. He's one of those guys that always asks you really deep questions when you're just trying to shoot the shit and eat some tacos, right? And
yeah, you need one of them.
Yeah. And he was like, what does your spirituality look like today, Joseph? Like, what's your practice? And so I had to kind of think about it for a minute. But, what I try to do for my spirituality today is have at least one activity in 4 different areas, right? So one is doing something that's good for my physical body. So like working out, surfing, something physical, right?
Did you do anything today?
I'm going after this.
Okay.
Yeah. Something for my physical body, something for my mind, which, books, puzzles, doesn't matter, but something brainy, right? Something that's just for fun. So that's usually a video game.
Mm-hmm.
and then something that is creating something, whether that be Legos, paint, music.
You have to do one of the four or all four every day?
All four, but not necessarily every day.
Okay.
But like all four of those things have to be a part of my life. And I feel like that really feeds my spiritual self.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I do surfing. I've started writing again, which is a very interesting adventure into my brain. And yeah, the physical movement stuff. But I think like yoga also is one of the most fabulous things that a person can do for recovery, because it meets most of those, right?
Yeah.
In one. So they can tick off 4 things with one activity, which I'm a fan of.
Oh, that's actually pretty good.
I can do more than one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. You quadruple your productivity.
Well, you know what's
100%.
We were talking about yoga earlier today because we do these at Recovery Unplugged. We do these surveys when a client leaves. How did we do? How is your therapist? How is your food? How is your bed? All the different aspects of treatment. And clients constantly ask for yoga.
Yeah.
But then when we hire somebody,
I don't want to do it.
Nobody goes to yoga ever. And so we bring in yoga. No one does it. So we get rid of yoga. And then they're like, we want yoga.
Yeah. No, they want the option for yoga. When I was a client at Recovery Unplugged, I went to the one in Fort Lauderdale, and they would take you on the beach every morning. And they'd be like, listen, even if you don't want to do yoga and just go sit by the beach, you could do it. They'd be like, nah. And then the same thing. Well, what do you want? I want to go to the beach more. And it's like, we offer it every fucking morning. You could go for 20 minutes and just sit on the beach. But
so
when I worked in a treatment center, I've worked in heaps of treatment centers, but we used to do yoga in the mornings at 7 a.m. and I would get there early so that I'd go around and wake everyone up. It's like, come on, yoga, let's go. You wanted this, you fucking get up, we're doing it. I'm here.
Yeah, I had to get up and put on these tights. You're going to have to get up and put on some. So I'm not a surfer though, but the beach in the morning, right? Like no umbrella, no beach volleyball, no, just
the beach.
Being there is probably one of the most, like, for me, like in nature where I can find kind of a connection the most.
Scuba diving is another thing.
Ooh.
Scuba diving is the bomb. It's like the best thing. It's really expensive here, so I don't do it as much as I want to.
I think it's expensive.
Do you practice any form of meditation regularly?
When I'm surfing and diving, you
get into a meditative state. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very restless. I do mindfulness rather than meditation, like sitting and I have a bit of attention.
I have one of the out of anybody I know who's been diagnosed with ADHD, I am probably one of the worst that I know, and it's like it's pretty bad. But
that's that alcoholic thinking. Of all people I know with ADHD, I'm
the worst. Nobody's worse than me. Nobody's got it like I do.
No one's got more H than my D.
No, they do not. But however, I did TM, and I've been practicing that for maybe like 2 years now, and I would say most days I do it. If I don't do it for one day, I kind of feel a little bit of difference. And it's not like it's easy. It's not like I get there and it works. But when I don't do it, I feel a lot worse. And I heard a great thing about the meditation. It's like, if you don't have 20 minutes to meditate, do 40.
Mm-hmm.
And it works. It's seriously, I mean, just giving myself that time every day. It's if nothing else, like I gave myself that time to just do absolutely nothing. And my mind races.
I like to have.
Okay. No, please go ahead.
I was going to say I like to split my day up into quarters. So I'll do breathing. I do like just focused breathing. So 5 minutes at a time in the morning, at morning tea, afternoon tea, and then at bedtime. So just having that brief pause in each moment, it splits the day up into quarters. So if the first part of the day has been shit, when I take that pause, I can restart. So the whole day doesn't have to be shit.
You really do quadruple your productivity.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
That
And I like to do like 3 or 4 things at once as well. You can't just do one thing.
Yeah.
always
Multitasking.
Yeah, that's one of my most, I don't know, for me sometimes it can get to be unhealthy how much I try to do multiple things simultaneously.
I gave up on that.
Yeah.
I tried.
So we're getting towards the end of our time today, but before we move into our rapid fire question time, I wanted to just ask you, what is it that you wish more people understood about trauma?
That it is about the way we deal with it. So it's not actually necessarily the event, which is traumatic, but the trauma comes in having to deal with it on your own, not having support, not being able to talk about it, not having it recognized. So
it's more about not having supportive, caring, compassionate people around you to process that.
Yeah. Or not feeling like you do. So the shame factor. So being able to talk about something that is really horrendous can reduce that shame over time.
Awesome. All right. So next thing we're going to do is get into a little something that we call rapid fire question time.
It's rapid fire question time.
Super simple. We're going to ask you 5 questions super fast. They're mostly pretty silly. And just say the first thing that comes to mind. So
It'd be interesting.
Yes. So I'll go first. Ben and Jerry. Do you guys have Ben and Jerry's ice cream in Australia?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. So Ben and Jerry's, they come to you and they say, we want to do a signature ice cream flavor based on you. What would you like us to put into the ice cream, and what do you want to call the ice cream?
I would have banana and salted caramel with blue coloring, and I'd call it Sandi James.
Nice.
I like it.
What is your theme song?
I don't know. I can't think of one now. It would have to be Pink, though. A Pink song, I think.
By the artist Pink? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just a
But
Pink
I don't know.
song.
People can listen. We get really out there sometimes now. Maybe people can feel colors and.
Yeah, not a Pink song. A Pink song.
Okay, a Pink song, not a Pink song.
Not a Pink song. All right. If you were forced to eat at Outback Steakhouse, what would you order?
They just call it steakhouse there.
We have an Outback Steakhouse.
Do you?
I would order fish and chips.
I worked at Outback Steakhouse.
Did you?
Yeah, it was
Blooming
horrible.
onions. All right, time travel vacation. You get to go anywhere in the past, any era, and go hang out for a little while. Where are you going?
I'd go back to probably 2017, not far back, and I'd go back to Borneo.
Oh, okay, that was it.
Borneo.
Borneo.
Nice.
Yeah.
God, you've been everywhere.
Wow.
That was when I learned to scuba dive, and it's the most magical place.
We've never had anybody who said something in their own past that they went to. It's usually always like fantasy based or hundreds of years back. But that's pretty cool that it's actually something that's not in the distant past for you. So
All right. We need one more question. I didn't think about this long enough. Okay. So, since you're never mind. I was saying, like, if you could pick one
Now you're
place to
scaring me.
I was gonna say, like, if you pick one place to live forever, but she's probably Borneo. Do you guys have tacos in Australia?
Oh, of course.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do another food-based question.
I mean, they live in the future, so they, of course.
You're forced.
We have better tacos in the future.
You are forced to choose between either eating pizza for the rest of your life or tacos for the rest of your life. Which one do you pick and why?
Oh my God, that's an impossible decision to make.
Tough.
No, there actually is a right answer.
Yeah.
I would go tacos
Yeah.
because
That is the right answer.
there's more variety in them.
Yeah, we're both of Mexican descent, so correct answer.
Mhm.
Yes, the correct answer is tacos. Even if you're not of Mexican descent, the
Right.
correct
Well,
answer
I'm
is
saying
always
you win points with
always tacos.
Tacos are great. And have you seen him in it somewhere in America? I need to find out where that is. Someone's created banana pizza.
banana pizza. No, I've never seen that. I have had pickle pizza though, and it's fantastic.
I could see banana pizza with like maybe like a dulce de leche or some kind of caramel on top of it. That sounds pretty.
Yeah, I don't know. Anything better than pineapple.
Oh, okay.
Blasphemy.
You know, I've actually been converted. I used to be a never on pizza pineapple
my
person,
God.
and then Domino's has this particular style of pineapple pizza. Anyway, all right. Anyway, the last thing we do, before we wrap things up, is give you the floor as our wrap up. You know, so if you'd like to promote something, if you've got a website, if you've got a particular cause, or if you just want to leave our audience with some words of wisdom or some guidance, it's kind of the floor is yours to do with as you will.
Wow. I do have a website. It is www.sandijames.com.au. And in there is information about the Arise model, about the surf therapy program that I'm about to start up here in Australia, therapy, coaching, and compulsive exercise group that I run. So I'm busy little beaver. I'm traveling to the States this weekend, which is super exciting. So flying back in time. And one of the things that I am wanting to do is meet with fellow harm reduction practitioners. And the one message that I want to give people is stop blaming yourself and blaming others for what's happening, and let's move into the solution and resolve some of this shit rather than trying to find out whose fault it is.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, Sandi, just, I'd like to thank you once again for your time today, for sharing your morning with us. It's been really fun getting to watch the sun rise in Australia as throughout it's gotten brighter and brighter. But thank you so much for your time, for sharing with us about yourself, about your work. Thank you. And then
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And then to all of our loyal listeners / viewers, we need to come up with a cute name for like our listeners.
Talk screeners? Nah. I don't know. Okay, I'll work on it.
We'll think about it. But to you, our loyal listeners, what were you doing? What were you trying to tell me?
Follow.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting to that. We'd like to thank you for your time, our loyal listeners, for watching, for listening, wherever it is that you listen to us and our podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your mama, tell your therapist. And also you can check us out on toxicologypod.com if you want to buy one of those cool shirts that we have now.
Oh, yeah, we do have cool shirts.
We have shirts now. I have to wear one next week. Anyway, until next time, as we like to say here on Toxicology, there's 1,000 ways in and 1,000 ways out. And we hope you find yours.